Hello, everybody. This is Ben with Ben Talks Talent Conversations. And today I have Beata. She is a fractional COO for small growth stage companies. And today we're going to talk about a variety of topics. Beata, how are you doing?
I am doing fantastic. I think I mentioned I'm in Georgia. And so this weather, anyone in the Southeast right now, for us, the weather is perfect fall.
Yes, awesome. And in case you don't know, and you've been watching my channel for years, I'm in Wisconsin and weather is still palatable. It's probably not that, but still decent. All right, well, I'm going to jump right in because we have a lot of interesting things to talk about. The first thing I want to talk about is scaling companies. So what you do specifically. So for those of you who aren't maybe you don't know what a fractional COO is, what Beata specifically does is she helps companies scale and grow. So I want to dive into that a little bit. What
Yeah.
specific value do you offer a CEO of a small growth stage company who is looking to do just that?
Yeah, absolutely. It does, I will say, like everything, it does vary depending on the company and what the company is needing at that stage. Really what I do is I come alongside visionary CEOs. So typically visionaries, they have tons of ideas, thousands of ideas a day. They're pulling in different directions. And so what I do is I help them to define one, a really clear vision of what they want their company to be in 10 years, in 3 years, in 1 year. And then from there, I help them break that down into actionable items that need to be executed in the next quarter, in the next month. And then from there, I help break it down further into what are the KPIs and actual specific measurables that need to happen for us to hit those, whether it's projections, whether it's specific client goals, what needs to happen for that to occur. So that's kind of the beginning step of the process. We complete SWOT analysis to understand where our strengths, where our weaknesses, where our risks, to make sure that we are staying really focused on the big vision. And then from there, a lot of it is me helping to kind of put guardrails for the CEO. When they see shiny objects, I'm like, love it, beautiful object. Hey, let's refocus on what the vision is. Unless we're going to change the vision, that's not the thing that we should be focusing our time on. So really transforming somebody that's really scatterbrained. They want to grow their company. Their company might already be growing really quickly, but it's really just all over the place. So changing that into an actionable prioritized plan. And then the last thing is really on the scalability side. Obviously, a lot of that comes with optimizing processes, so making sure that people are focused on the right things. I see a lot of companies the people are busy. I have no doubt that they're working really hard, but they're not working on the right things, and they're doing things the way that they've always done it, which can result in just crazy amounts of inefficiencies. And so if you can tweak a couple of those things, the company can actually grow without too much, new input coming. So that's kind of the
Yeah.
big picture. It's a lot of strategic consulting, executive coaching, as well as more fundamental operations in the weeds of how we make this work.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I appreciate you distilling down what is probably a ton of work into like a brief summary. But if you're a visionary CEO out there, that probably sounds pretty familiar. The having a million ideas and wanting to chase everything down. And just from the reading I've done between visionary integrators and stuff like that, I know that that can be incredibly valuable to have somebody focus in that energy, that passion, those visions into actually achieving goals. So yeah, thank you. I think that summarized it quite well. And
Awesome.
um, so let me ask you this: that is probably really rewarding because you're partnering with people who are inspired, passionate people, and you're helping them scale their business. You're helping them grow. That has an immediate, tangible output. What would you say is the most rewarding example you have of coming in and helping a business do just that? Because I imagine there's a ton of them, but if you had to like think back and go, okay, this time, this felt really impactful. What
Yeah.
is the story?
No, that's a great question. I actually had one recently that maybe because it's top of mind. But I have the CEO that he has a couple really key clients, really amazing clients. And he for some reason got set. This was a couple weeks ago. We're in October. And so he had randomly decided he wanted to hit this really ambitious revenue goal for the year. I am all for ambitious goals, but he was like, I want to hit this goal. Our team, we all have to push, have to focus on this. And to deliver that, it's going to be kind of a scramble. And so I was with him for a little bit. And then the same thing I kind of mentioned earlier, I was like, wait, let's take a step back. Right now, we have some pretty large risks in terms of your reliance on these couple of key partners. Where we really need to focus our efforts is actually bringing in new clients and building out that funnel. And so I love the revenue goals. That's amazing. But to focus on that in the next, 3 months, great, you can have that short-term win, but then you're going to start the next year and you are not going to be any closer to growing a scalable business that's repeatable, that is protected. Yeah. And so that was it took a little bit of massaging to make sure that we got it in the right spot, and they were able to understand the reasoning for that. Because it's hard to be like, well, I want the revenue now. Like, that sounds fun, but really keeping that big picture in mind. And then one other quick one is there was a marketing technology company. They were growing really, really quickly, but they did not have a lot of insight into their actual financial data and metrics. Obviously, they were closing the financials on a weekly cadence. And so I was actually able to come in and really look at the processes, really look at what they were tracking. And a lot of the incentive structures for their team were not correct. A lot of the processes were not correct. So from those decisions, we actually built out like real-time performance dashboards where the CEO was able to see for the different departments, what should their KPIs be? What are they? What should these metrics be to get us to that end number that we're looking for? And then for him to have real data that he's managing to on a daily, weekly basis versus just looking at the end of the month and being like, we didn't hit what we wanted. Let's try again this month. I don't know what to do. And so that was really, really fulfilling of being able to give them a tool that, whether I still work with them, but whether, in the future when I don't, knowing that I've given them something that can really help their business get there. So there's so many stories like that where it's really cool and very, like you said, very rewarding to be able to just give these amazing people what they need to get to where they want to be.
Yeah. That second example is so interesting to me because it seems like these small tweaks, right? Like you're measuring this, but what you really should be measuring and monitoring is this.
Right.
And they're just little levers that you pull, but those little levers can have massive impacts if you know which levers to pull and if you know what to modify to achieve the outcome you're looking for. But knowing that isn't as easy as just going, oh, we should just change this. I mean, it can be challenging kind of sorting through that and imagining, okay, like what do we need to modify so that this whole thing just operates more effectively?
Right.
But so interesting, like what an interesting puzzle to figure out.
Yeah. I think one of the pieces that's always the most challenging is the resistance to change. And so a lot of this is also helping CEOs navigate that with their teams. People, depending on how long the company's been around, but people have been doing things a certain way. They like it a certain way. And so that's one thing people don't like is when it does become a little bit more measured. And they have there's some more accountability. Often that takes some coaching and a lot of kind of management with the CEO to be able to handle that change.
I can only imagine, because when you think about trying to persuade a CEO to change something, you're trying to persuade a person who, generally speaking, throughout the course of their life has been pretty right about the way they're doing things. And most of the time they've been successful enough that it's, they have I imagine a lot of faith in like their decisions, their vision, the way they want to do things, and to have someone say, hey, you actually need to modify this just a bit. That's probably a really interesting dynamic. Just so it's a person who's been so successful to be like, hey, you actually might be doing something a bit wrong.
Right. And the best advice I have for anyone that works, there's a lot of egos involved because, like you said, these people are successful. There's a reason that they're CEOs of companies. But is find a way to make it their idea. And so you usually back into it. But if you want to get here and that is not just because you want to get there, but it is the right thing, how can you help bring that person along to where they're actually the one that's like, wait, let's do this. And you're like, great idea. Let's go. Like, I'm ready to be there. So it is a lot of the psychology behind how you can help people get to where they need to be.
Yeah. Awesome. What are the things that you think have helped you get to where you're at, right? Because you're obviously in a very interesting position. We just gave a few examples here. You shared a few stories of you helping people who have built businesses and they're running them, generally speaking, effectively, but not as effective as possible.
Yeah.
And so now you find yourself where you're this person who comes in and helps elevate them. So how did you get here? What are the things that you think helps you be in the spot you're at today?
Yeah, that's a great question. I actually studied exercise science and psychology in school, nothing related to business, nothing related to finance, operations, product, anything like that. And so I kind of stumbled my way into an executive assistant position, working for a CEO. And I really do attribute, I think EA positions are a fantastic way for people to start where they can get access to a lot of different parts of a business and see behind the curtain. So that is one thing. I feel very lucky that I was put in that position. But the second thing was I had a boss that was willing to open doors for me. And so I was probably an EA for 3 months and I was like, okay, give me more. So I took on product. Okay, give me more. I took on HR. Give me more. I took on business development. And then that was where I was like, wait, I'm actually running the operations of this entire business. So I would say one thing is having a team and a boss that is willing to open those doors. You have to ask for it most of the time. They're not just going to think about it. You have to tell them, I want to get here. My goal is always to be a COO. And I told my boss that, a couple months in. And so then every conversation I'm saying, hey, what can you give me to that can get me closer to that position? So one, having somebody that will open doors, connect you to the right people. And then the second is having an executive coach. And so I've worked with my coach, shout out Keith, for the past 5 years. He was a former COO of a software company. And just having that person that is a couple years down the road from you and has been where you want to be and can really help you be strategic about what your next move is and making sure that every move you make is aligned with what that envision is. It's the same thing that I do with businesses, but you need that person for your personal life as well. So I'd say coaching and then people that will open doors.
Yeah, that's so interesting because in some ways what you described is a bit of a perfect storm in
Mm,
which, you have I imagine it's relatively rare to have like a leader who's willing to like let you take on more and take on more. Um, but you could have that, but then if you don't have the desire to request those things and demonstrate the ability to take those things on and then take every step, that next step and request it, like both of those have to be in sync. Both of
yeah,
those have to exist. Like just having one of those is not going to be enough, but having
right.
both of them is critically important. So interesting.
And
Um,
can I add one more thing there?
yeah,
The other part with that is with the leveling up. It's like, okay, I'm comfortable here. Then I level up. You're very uncomfortable.
yeah,
You could fail. Like
yeah,
you're gonna make mistakes. You could fail. And so it's getting comfortable with that cycle of sure, if you just want to
yeah,
stay here your whole life, absolutely. There's people that want to do that. For me, that I have no interest in that. Like even where I am right now, I hope that in a year from now, I'm embarrassed by the level of work I'm doing. And I am
yeah.
so much further in what I'm able to provide people. But you have to be comfortable with making mistakes and being okay with not being good at something at the beginning, which for a perfectionist like me, it's very challenging, but it's what needs to happen to achieve the things that you want to achieve.
Yeah, I'm glad you added that because I think that's an important part of that. It's taking on more and taking on more and asking for what's next isn't going to be just consistent linear success. There's going to be some situations in there where you do not perform and it's going to be hard. And I think there's a really great quote and it's show me someone who's never failed and I'll show you someone who's never accomplished anything. And it's
Mm,
you need to be willing to take risks and
yeah.
be willing to live in the uncomfortability of failure in order to actually grow and succeed. And that just kind of reminds me of that. So I think that's a great add-on. Um, One of the things that you mentioned in our first conversation that I want to make sure we touch on because you're very passionate about it is helping women negotiate fair compensation packets commensurate with their input, their output, and what they contribute to an organization. And I think that's really important too. So I just want to shut up and let you talk about it. So I don't
Yeah.
know if that's how you're appropriately supposed to end a question, but I'm just going to tee you up and let you talk about it.
No, that's yeah, it's funny. This has always been the thing that I keep coming back to of what's my why is helping women in business to really negotiate what is fair, exactly like you said. So I appreciate you bringing that up. I think a lot of women, and not all women, but we have a often have a hard time and are really lack that confidence to ask for what we need. I hear a lot of things like, I'm greedy for doing this. I feel needy. I'm asking for too much. And just frankly, oftentimes that is not the case with men. That is not how they are thinking about these things. And so, really, there's a couple components when I'm helping women figure out how to approach their bosses and have these conversations. One is really working on that confidence. And so, everything needs to be measurable in business. You know, you can't say, I need to get paid X amount and you can't back it up. And so, first thing is actually being able to quantify and have a measurable list of the value that you add to your organization. The next thing is really focusing and making sure that what you're delivering is aligned with the long-term vision of the company. Um, and so, kind of clarifying those two things. I've found that once a woman in business, once they're able to define those things, that's where the confidence comes. If, wait, I actually have this backing, that I have something quantifiable, that I can go and bring this to, you know, the person that's going to determine my compensation package. That I am feel it's a stronger hand to negotiate from. So it's been such a fun thing to navigate that with women in business and see people get really fair offers. And it's not just salary. It can be things like more time. It depends what your values are. More time off. It can be better health insurance benefits. It can be equity if you want to be a long-term partner of this business. But I have found that it's a very it's a gap in the market in terms of women having other women that are willing to come alongside them and step into that spot that's insecure, that they're insecure, or that they have no idea where to start. Being like, hey, I've got you. Let's be really strategic about this. We're never asking, you know, point blank. Our bosses should always know that this ask is coming. So we're never just coming in a performance review and saying, no, I want X% raise. This happens 6 months before you're even going to ask for that, is when the conversations start to take place. So yeah, I love it. It is, as I would say, it's a little more rewarding than the fractional COO, just because it's my, you know, my kind of my passion of, I've had
Yeah.
people that are willing to do that with me before.
Yeah, it's so interesting because these conversations tend to be a little bit shorter. I feel like that specific conversation could be like its own full, robust conversation that's longer than like this conversation was in general.
Right.
And then one last thing that was kind of funny when you were saying this, I was thinking to myself, when you're talking about, that sometimes women feel like I'm being greedy, I'm asking
Mhm.
for too much. In my head, I was thinking, man, I've never thought that. And then you said, and candidly, then, they don't think like, I was like, oh yeah, I don't think like that. I've never thought like that. There's never been a single time when I've ever asked for a raise or countered an offer or done any of
Mhm.
that where I thought, am I being too greedy? Like, it's never even occurred to me.
Yeah.
Like the thought hasn't even popped into my head. So it's so
Yeah.
interesting that you said that.
No, that's such a good point. And personally, I think, you know, a lot of people talk about the pay gap and things like that. I
Yeah.
think a lot of that is because women are not comfortable entering into those uncomfortable conversations where they could be turned down or could be perceived as X, Y, and Z. And so that is my mission. I'm like, hey, ladies, let's take ownership of this. Like, let's get in there and let's start advocating for ourselves in these different positions.
Yeah, and I think you mentioned when we talked last that if there are women out there who did want coaching, because what you're talking about is not just like a quick conversation. You're talking about strategy that you're planning months and months out, positioning, acquiring the data to make compelling arguments. Like that. That is a whole thing, and that's when you have a system like that. I think it increases the likelihood of success significantly.
Yeah.
So you mentioned that if women wanted to get in touch with you for coaching, that's something you had been open to. How would they go about doing that?
Yeah, absolutely. There's a couple ways you can find me. I'm not sure if you're going to put links, but I can
I
definitely,
can.
you could put the link to my LinkedIn profile. That's probably the best way to do it. And then from there, we would just schedule a quick call, make sure that it aligns for both of us. And then obviously, make sure that where you are aligns with where I am and that I'm actually able to help. And from there, we can talk about what coaching would look like.
Okay, awesome, awesome. Last thing that I always ask at the end of these interviews is, what are you passionate about outside of work?
It's a good question. First thing that comes to mind is I'm a part of this group called the Daily Arena. And so it's this awesome group of business professionals, all the way from, executives at companies to stay-at-home moms who are committed to challenging themselves. And so each month we hold different challenges. And so we've done anything from 5,000 burpees in a month, 10,000 push-ups. A couple months ago, it was running a half marathon, which I did with no training, wouldn't recommend. So I really enjoy those challenges outside, like that more physical challenges, because I use my brain a lot during the day. And sometimes you're just like, I don't want to use my brain at all. I just want to go out and run or do a burpee and not think about it. So that's definitely a fun passion outside of work.
Yeah, that's awesome. Funny story. I actually ran my first half marathon without training.
Really?
I did one 10-mile run. So I didn't, this was the only run I did prior to it. I did a 10-mile run like 2 weeks before it, on a treadmill. And then like at my gym, I was like, okay, well, I got this half coming up. And I did it. And I was so fatigued. And I remember that is the most tired I have ever been after a race. I've run several marathons since then, and they're not as tiring as the first half I ran because I just did
Really?
not prepare.
Yeah.
So that sounds really that cool. Not that don't do that. Like definitely prepare
Yeah.
for a race.
Don't
But
recommend.
yeah, very cool. Well, tell you what, Beata, thank you so much. I appreciate the insight. Um, it was great. It was great talking with you today.
Yeah, you too. Appreciate it. And if we ever want to have the longer discussion about women, I'm happy to jump back on and do that as well.
All right, sounds good.
Thanks so much, Bim. Bye.
Thank you.